Remember this. A farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop. But one who plants generously will get a generous crop. You must each decide in your heart how much to give. And don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure. For God loves the person who gives cheerfully. Verse 8, they share freely and give generously to the poor. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. As you're taking your seats, help me introduce the title for today's message. Everyone say, and I'm glad about it. You may take your seats. And I'm glad about it. Desire to have that spirit when I give. It is my heart's desire to be that excited that I will dance around. Now, granted, I think some of that was more than just excitement. There's some other issues that we probably need to discuss. But imagine if in the moments that we dealt with giving, it was felt with dancing and joy. It wasn't the heavy, oppressive kind of feeling that often accompanies messages or times of giving. But it was a release of freedom and delight amongst God's people because we know the reason why and the one who inspires our giving. This video about Brother Franklin, now listen, he dances and does stuff all the time. It's a whole litany of YouTube videos about him. But every time I see it, I wonder, have I ever felt that level of joy when I had an offering envelope in my hand? Now, to be very clear, our church has shifted. We used to do where you have the offering up front. People would go around and you would have to come. Then we transitioned to where you would have the offering basket flow from person to person. We do a modified version of that. Some of us have transitioned now that we don't even give in the space of worship. We have given it online, so we're able to go and scan the QR code, go to our locations to be able to do so. Or we've set it up in such a way where it's just a recurring gift. We don't even have to think about it to ensure that we don't forget to give back to the one that has been so good at giving to us. We have locked it into our financial institutions to make sure that they automatically just take the money and make sure that God is glorified. And all of those are wonderful. But I wonder, do we give with a sense of joy? Are we glad about it? Do we bring a level of happiness around the desire to even give back to God? When I was thinking about this, one of the things that stood out, I recently read that in March they came out with the world's happiest countries. Finland has topped the charts again for the 9th year straight to be one of the happiest countries in the world, to be the happiest. People find themselves happier than ever. And one of the things that always stands out in this connection between one of the happiest countries, at least perceived through the World Gallup poll, is that these individuals are not the wealthiest country. They're not the highest GDP. In fact, they're not even the highest GDP per capita. They are not the lowest, but they are not the highest. It begins to challenge our thought that the highest GDP automatically equates to highest levels of satisfaction and happiness. The two aren't connected. In fact, there are a number of other factors, such as social connections. There's a belief that these social structures, which allow for schooling to be free, you can go to college without gaining debt, and you know that when you come out, you have opportunities that await you more than just paying for debt that you incurred trying to be able to get a job because they told you you couldn't get a job without having this degree. But to get that degree, now you have to get the debt. That means that you will always have to work. And so instead of locking you into a system that consistently puts a finger on your back, it has freed you to be able to actually go after and try to do the things that you want to do. Just keep listening to me. Nobody would know I'm talking about you. I know many of us are quiet because Fannie Mae is in the background always asking for that payment back. We can't wait to tell Fannie Mae to make her way away from us because we're tired of all of the pressure that comes with doing something as simple. Or maybe it is health care. They tell us in our country that we ought to be healthier, that we should eat right, that we should live right, that we should exercise, and then to do the very things that they tell us to do. Now all of a sudden it costs an exorbitant amount of money. In fact, if you want to get Cheetos, it's much cheaper to get Cheetos than it is to get vegetables. I'll say that again. It's cheaper to get Cheetos than vegetables. Vegetables cost way too much. And so now that I'm already under the thumb of Fannie Mae, I'm already trying to count my coins. Now I have to determine, will I be healthy and eat less or get more out of my bang for my buck? And now get me some Cheetos because at least I get a bigger bag of Cheetos than I can get this one little apple. And then they tell you, well, you should be healthier, you should do the exercise, and then you try to find a good place to do the exercise, and the membership costs so much. But then you got the health insurance that says they're going to help cover your membership, but they don't cover for all the places, and the place you want to go, they don't cover that location. They will only send you to the one place that you don't want to go. And then when you finally do need the health insurance to show up and show out, because you've been showing up and showing out, constantly paying them, then they're going to tell you what is not covered inside the plan, even though it's what you need. And they're going to tell you what you really need, although they're not a doctor, is that you need to do this other thing, this other procedure that ain't what your doctor told you that you need to do. Now you got to sit there and you got to lobby for the very folks that you're paying to make sure that they pay to do the things that you've been paying to make sure that they would do in the first place. It's a reason why folks ain't happy, because it's not always connected just with the amount of money. It's these other systems that are in place. It's a sense of community. In fact, one of the things that they lifted up about Finland is they have one of the highest levels of trust among other citizens of their country. That when you get up and you walk around, your first inclination is not that these people around you are out to harm you, but that they're actually in this with you. This is like the old adage, and we often talk about the old days, or at least some of us are definitely feeling older today. But as you think about the older days, right, there was this idea that when you walk down your block or in your neighborhood, that although you were Miss Mary's son, Miss Brown, Mr. Peterson, and Tom Brown down the street that you didn't even know his last name, still had some stake in your growth, and you trusted them to be there to make sure that if you were by yourself, that you had a network of folks who would come around to be there for you. But then in a space like the Bay Area, we can't even live around the people that we most trust, so we're surrounded by people that we don't know. We try to get to know them, but the first thing that I do when I go to my house is drive into my garage, which connected to my house, so I can walk right into my house and I never have to see any of my neighbors. In fact, I have to intentionally go door to door to meet my neighbors, and I'm always wondering, what do they think when they see this little black boy ringing their doorbell? I'm like, baby, make some cookies, right? Like, it's gonna look better if I come with something in my hands. Because we don't trust each other anymore. We're further separated from each other. And so we constantly walk through life as if everybody is the enemy. And when everybody is the enemy, I'm always ready to fight. That means I can't be happy. And I know there's some of you like to fight. Happiness is found in your fight, but not all of us. Some of you are fighters by nature. You're like, I grew up to fight, baby. I wake up ready. I woke up this morning with my mind, stay on fighting, yeah. I'm sorry. Right? But this idea that there's a level of joy that comes when you know that you have people around you that will support. that your resources are enough to take care of what you need to do, if there's a happiness about it. Which is why when we talk about giving, oftentimes in the American context, it sounds so separated from an experience of joy that it almost feels cynical. Almost as if those that are saying these things are using it just for their own benefit. And I must be honest, as a pastor, as a leader of a church, there have been individuals that have used it just for their own benefit. They've played off of the desires to use scripture to get people to do a thing that ultimately benefited them. And so now there's even more distrust. But then when we come to places that are not doing that, it's hard to separate the two because they all sound the same. What do you mean that we ought to be joyful when we give? Do you know the financial pressures that are upon me? Every time I give, it lifts a level of stress. I mean, it's stretching me. Every time we talk about giving, this makes me think about all the things I cannot afford. It makes me think about all the things I wish I could do. In fact, it frustrates me because I want to be able to give better. I don't sit in church and desire not to be able to give back to God, but every time I look at what I'm doing, it doesn't seem like all of these things align, and I give the little bit that I can, but I don't recognize how I could get more, but I want to be able to give more. It hits me, and I'm not happy. I'm not a cheerful giver. In fact, I give to the point now where this is just a duty that I'm supposed to do. And Paul is writing here, and he's challenging a community to think differently. Now, let me be very honest. One of the things I love about 2 Corinthians is the way that it allowed me to see Paul not as the huge, amazing biblical figure that understood the deep truths of God. Not the one that will write, for all things work together for good who love God and are called according to his purpose, Romans 8:28. Or that we should give ourselves as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable unto God, which is our reasonable service. I'm not talking about that Paul, the Paul of lore that stood and talked about how often he had been beaten or shipwrecked. I'm not talking about the Paul that was able to be bitten by a poisonous snake. He shakes it off, and the people around think that he must be a god because of the way that God was protecting him. I ain't talking about that Paul. I'm talking about the Paul that looks like a pastor. The 2 Corinthians is a letter that is written to a community that Paul had started way back when. The book of Acts tells us about this journey that he went on. He starts these folks. In fact, in 1 Corinthians, he writes to them. He even tells them that he feels like their father in the faith, that he had been the progenitor for them. He had given them the gospel, that they had received the message under his tutelage, and he is so glad to see the way that God is working in their lives. Yet, as much as he started them, as much as he was the one to give them the gospel, as much as he was the one that labored with them, stayed with them, worked with them, now some new people have come on the scene. There's a new group of teachers that are coming around, and they're beginning to call into question Paul's authority, call into question Paul's teaching. In fact, they begin to rabble rouse and say, well, Paul is supposed to be so amazing, but when the last time he been here for y'all? And now the entire book of 2 Corinthians is Paul now writing out of the pain of a pastor to a community that is leaving him, although he still loves them. Paul is writing out of the pain of a pastor for a community that is leaving him, although he still loves them. And now he has to defend his record. Guys, y'all know me, man. When I first came, I didn't come with all of this arrogance or highly lifted up stuff. I came to you in humility. In fact, I came and I was so excited about the things that you were doing. And now I'm nervous because I was supposed to come and see you, and you're right. And my journey's changed. And now, because my journey changed doesn't mean that my love for you has changed. It just means that my circumstances have changed. And I don't want you to forget that I was the one that is there. In fact, now I'm concerned with coming because my heart is hurt and your hearts are hurt. And when we meet together, we might bump into each other in such a way that it wouldn't be a good encounter. So now I wonder, should I even come now? Because I'm worried about the way you would receive me, but my heart is still for you. And I'm waiting to hear back from Titus to see How's everything going in Corinthians? Now there's this group of folks, and they're trying to change the theology, and Paul is like, don't forget what I first taught you. I was there early. I wanted to make sure that you had it. And then in one of the most human moments of all in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 or 9, Paul is dealing with the fact that the Corinthian community had made a promise that they were going to give to the church in Macedonia, this church that is struggling, this church that is in need. And now, because of strained relationship, he's worried if they're going to hold to their gift. And now he has to do the human thing. I want to remind you what you said. And I want to tell you, I don't want to look crazy. And I don't want y'all to look crazy. I don't want you to look like y'all ain't holding y'all word. And I definitely don't want to look like I ain't holding my word, because I've been out here talking all this good stuff about you. I've been telling about how great of a church you are, talking about how mature y'all are, talking about how great you live, talking about how willing y'all are to give. I want to make sure that now all this good stuff I done said, I don't look crazy, because now the winds are shifting how you think about me. So Paul is writing to them. He says, don't forget. And then Paul does this really beautiful kind of way of logic to try to help them understand how they should be giving. And Paul does, and what I say are kind of like these 3 different levels of giving that can kind of help us understand how we get to where we're trying to get. Ultimately, Paul wants them to give at a level that is their spiritual maturity and will lead them to joy. But in knowing he wants them to get there, he knows that they won't start there. Follow with me. First, he opens up and he's talking in verse 6. He says, remember this, let me teach you that a farmer who gives or sows sparingly reaps sparingly. But if you want to reap a whole bunch, you have to sow a whole bunch. So the first way that Paul begins to teach about giving is now this giving is connected out of desire. Give out of desire. Watch this. I know that when you first start, your connection to giving will only be connected to what you get back. I want you to try God and see that your giving will not be frustrated. Give and you shall receive. In fact, I want you to try this. I want to push you that way. In fact, I want to encourage you that it is connected to the reward. And I want to make sure that you understand that this is the bottom floor of giving. That when we begin to give, we give at this point because many of us are growing in our faith. In my own life, this is where I started. The other day, I told you all that I gave this wonderful offering, and then not too long after, God turned that offering around and gave me more. It was foundational for my faith. But God doesn't always give to me like that no more, because now I had to ascend. So for some of you, this is your starting place. You give out of expectation of what God is going to give. But then not only do you give out of desire, watch the next place. He says, first, the one who plants few seeds will get a small crop, but the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. Then he says, you must each decide in your own heart how much you give. So first we have give out of this desire, our desire for God to reward me. God, give back to me everything I've given. I want to see it pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That is a wonderful place. That's a starting place. In fact, it's a place that sometimes I'll go back to, and God has to remind me, you ain't there no more. Then there's giving out of decision. Everybody say decision. We decide. We have a conversation with God, and we decide what we should give. And sometimes mixed into that conversation is our reluctance to do the thing that God told us to do. Keep looking at me. I know I'm walking heavy, but I'm going to keep on walking. There are moments that then when we talk to God and God tells us what we ought to give, it seems like it's too much for us to bear. It seems beyond sometimes our capability. And oftentimes it is. It is not something that we have rightly done. It's hard to figure out how to do, but we sense God telling us to do it. And God now is growing you into a new level of dependence, because now your faith has to say, if God is telling me to do this thing, I ought to do it because God tells me to. I don't fully understand how it works, but my faith is saying God will never tell me to do something that God would not obligate himself to make sure he brings us through. So God, what are you telling me to do? This is higher level of maturity. Now I'm having a conversation with God. I have to be honest with God. God, you know, I got kids in school. God, you know, I got this health stuff going on. God, you know, I got to deal with my parents. God, you know, I got to help this other person. God, you know, I've been bankrolling this other family member. God, you know, we got issues at the house. God, you know, everything that's going on. God, you know, my job ain't secure. God, you know, they've been shutting down DEI. I'm not sure if I'm on the chopping block. God, you know, all of the things that are going on. God, you know, my car been trying to fall apart since day one. Its wheels are shaking. My car don't shake just because it wants to. The wheels literally are trying to come off that thing. But God, you've been holding it together. God, what do you want me to do? Are you telling me to do this in spite of what I see? It says make the decision. That now we talk to God. And God calls us to make a decision about what we do. And then the last one, and this is the big one, I promise. It ain't a whole bunch. It's not rocket science, but it's wonderful. Then it is giving out of delight. Watch this. He goes back and says, and don't give just out of reluctance or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. That he loves the person who actually is not giving just to get, but is giving sheerly for the joy of the giving. Okay. We have a place that we start. I want you to hear this. There's some of us, we will start with the idea of, God, I'm giving because I'm trying to understand how this thing's work. I'm a little reluctant. This is where I'm starting. God, get me going. Then we grow a little bit, and then we make the decision. God, you said I can do it this much. I want to give this much. I promised you, and you told me, and God, I'm going to do it. And I want to let you know, as soon as you make a promise to God, just know that the enemy hears your promise to God and is going to come at your promise and challenge everything that you thought. As soon as you say, God, I'm going to give you this much, then all of a sudden everything breaks loose. Just keep looking at me and won't nobody know I'm talking about you, but I'm talking about myself. Me and my wife, we wrote a agreement to God that we was going to participate in the TLC, and we was doing wonderful, and we said, last time we did this, now God, we going to do this because we believe that you're a big old God, and we just know that you're going to bless us and bless us. In fact, last time, God, you let us buy a brand new house while we was in the middle of giving our stuff. This is what we're going to do for you, God. And then we write that thing down. We make that initial gift. I'm high-fiving my wife. Baby, it's about to blow up. Baby, we about to do good. It's about to blow our minds. And then issue after issue after issue after issue. And now I'm like this, wait a minute, Lord. This ain't how it's supposed to work. See, it says give and ye shall receive. And all of a sudden now we're still challenged because the enemy now is challenging even our faith. But then there's a new level. There's this moment where now we start to give, and it's not even predicated on if we get it back. It's even beyond just the decision that we've made. It is strictly for the joy of what we are doing, that this actually gives me happiness, that something on the inside of me starts to move around. I get happy. In fact, I'm glad when I think about it because I can think about the God that has provided for me, and it is nothing that I'm worried about that will stop me from doing what I've already promised to God I'm going to do. There's a deeper well. And as we look at these tiering systems, I'm amazed that I have often thought it was only one or the other, when the truth is oftentimes in our spiritual journey, we matriculate back and forth between one and the other. There have been moments where I have been glad about it. And then moments where I was like, God, I need you to return this thing to me immediately, Lord. Moments where I made the decision. And then moments where the joy seems like it was snatched from my soul. There are moments where we move and God is constantly pushing. And Paul is saying, I want you to know pastorally that I understand all of these things. And I just want you to see that God will never leave his righteous people. Now, this is not saying to the one that literally has nothing to go and give your everything and be destitute. But this is a call to those that have a whole bunch. And not the whole bunch like, oh, well, you know, I just got a little bit more to them, but I ain't got that much. Some of you have been blessed beyond measure. Okay, I know you don't want to clap because you don't want people next to you to know that you're that blessed person. See, Isn't that funny? Especially at Black church, we got to be careful what you clap. We be like this. Oh, wait, they might. You sure enough right, Pastor. I'm gonna keep that to myself. It's so hard out here. It's hard out here for a Christian. Like it's all that, right? But for some of you, God has blessed you in such a way where it is almost a sin against God for you to hold all this to yourself. That God blessed you not just because of you, so that you can be a blessing, so that the communities that you are connected with would be better and they can continue to move, so that we can now see the things that we want to do and move and see that people would be made better, that lives would be transformed, that your community of faith could be better. It blows my mind. And this is where Pastor Jason is showing, right? I'll let my Pastor Jason hang out, right? I'm at this event this past week. We went for our after-school program because it's on the chopping block again. Last year, they cut funding, then they brought funding back at a much less rate, and we're still trying to be able to provide after-school programming for families at no cost, because we know the cost of the valley is so high. So many in our area, so many folks that are middle and lower class, it's almost impossible for you to get good care. And this is that window where kids get into so many problems. County officials, city officials, oh my God, we love the work that you're doing. Oh, Emmanuel, keep on going. Oh, you are such a blessing to our community. And then we like, okay, help us be a blessing. They're like, well, our budget. Well, we don't have any money. So this last week, we go to this event, and we're sitting there. They want us to meet with foundation leaders and trying to see if we can make connections to see if we can find funding. And I'm going in, and I'm sitting there, and I'm doing my best thing. If you know me, I am not a networker. Like, that is not my thing. It just drives me up a wall. Like, I get stressed. It's just not my thing. But I'm giving my best face. I'm socializing. I'm talking to everybody. I'm shaking hands. I'm smiling. I got the whole dog and pony show going. Like, hey, right? Trying to do all the things that we can, right? And I'm doing all of this, and I'm sitting there, and I'm watching all of these other nonprofits that literally are doing phenomenal work, are begging to keep the work moving forward. Everybody says that, man, we need you all to do it, but nobody wants to bankroll it. Nobody wants to ensure that it can happen. And I'm sitting there, man, with just this pit in my stomach, frustrated. Because then I'll listen to the news, and we'll hear money flying to resources and things that make no sense to me. That almost 90 or more % of the philanthropic dollars from Silicon Valley don't ever touch Silicon Valley. Because we don't believe that people in Silicon Valley actually have needs. And so we rather take a better photo out with some kids out of Maui or some folks in Malaysia because they look impoverished. So now I can look good at giving my money and make sure that it now looks better for me. But I don't want to help folks in Silicon Valley. I'd rather let the people right next to me, my neighbors, fall into a pit. We'll watch them, and then we'll blame them that they didn't have any other opportunities when there were groups of folks trying to save the very folks that are right next to them with no ability. And I'm sitting there and I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry that we even got to ask. I'm angry that then, depending on who write a check, it might change what we're actually trying to do. And then I'm sitting there like, man, what if our church was so strong that we could just bankroll it? We didn't have to keep asking everybody to do the stuff that we know that we wanted to do. We were able to do it because we believed in what we're trying to do. We said that if we did what we're trying to do, we know that God would meet us in all the ways that we would need God to meet us. But that would mean that we have to be willing to do what we need to do. And we don't have to keep going and doing the dog and pony show, begging for folks to give us stuff, because now we can show up and say, whether you help us or not, we still going to be able to show up because we know the type of God that we serve, and we trust the God that's going to let us be the type of church that we want to be. We want to be the type of church that doesn't just serve ourselves. We want to be the type of church that makes an impact in the world. We want to be the type of church that says, if God be for us, who can be against us? That's the type of church I'm looking to serve. So I was holding it, watching it. I'm asking God, what will you do for us? And God just started to run down all the sermons that we've gone through in this series. That we started earlier with checkings and savings. And the whole point was that we have to get to the place where our current concerns, earthly concerns, don't create so much stress that it shakes our dependency on God. That we must check that our savings is not just on earth, but it's also in heaven through the faithful stewardship of our resources. That many of us, we can have a mom, a miracle of multiplication. And we wanted to make sure that we recognize that although we are under systems that financially stress us, that we still have a God that is able to stretch things even when it doesn't seem like it's possible. And we can see that in the lives of many of our own mothers, but even more so in the fact that God has taken our little bit and stretched it to our lot. I've also led us through this idea of what it says that we've been robbed. And we've been robbed is not just a message about tithing and that we are been robbed in God, but we have been robbed of the opportunity not just to feel that we give out of obligation, but we have this opportunity to show up and give just out of appreciation, knowing that if we give to God, God will never stop giving to us. And then we closed it off. Last week was, is there blood on your offering? With the idea of that if your offering doesn't cost you anything, if it is not a sacrifice, if it doesn't make you feel difficult or challenged, that maybe we have missed what it costs to be in relationship and in the presence of God. And this week, I've come back to close it all off with, and I'm glad about it. And I'm glad that God is doing what God is doing, that I'm glad that God has met us. And I want to help somebody today. I don't know where you are or what you may be going through. I don't know how you may feel in all of this, but I want to remind somebody that you have a reason to be glad about it. You have a reason to be glad about what God is doing in your life. So when you show up and the offering comes, it's not just about the dollars. I start thinking about the goodness of God. I start thinking about all the ways that He's made. I start thinking about how amazing He has been, that my God has shown up. In fact, it's another day's journey, and I'm glad about it. Why? Because my God gave me breath in my body. My God gave me activity in my limbs. I can think about all the difficulties I'm going through, and guess what? I'm glad about it because I serve a God that can turn my challenges into goodness for my life, and I'm glad about it. I'm glad that my God has made it a challenge, because when it's challenging me, it grows me, making me better, and I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm glad about it. I'm glad that I got a God that is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all I can ask or think. I'm glad about it. I got a God that can do it. And I promise, I was thinking about this last thing. You can take your seats. I'm going to close with this idea. As I was thinking about giving, God kept putting this idea of crumple zones in my mind. I'm like, God, that ain't got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Like, God, like, I'm over here. He said, but think about a crumple zone, right? For some of you that know, a crumple zone is a intentional engineering design built into a car that when it runs into something, that particular space gives. It deforms. It fails, if you will, so that it can protect what's on the inside. To stop the inside from being completely harmed, the outside deforms so that it can preserve what's on the inside. That if you were to make the outside fully sturdy, that means all of the force of the impact then will be experienced by that which is on the inside. So to protect that which is on the inside, you create a space that intentionally deforms, crumples up, and now all of that force doesn't go into that thing which is on the inside. I was like, okay, God, I get it. There's some things that we might bump into, and now we need to have some crumple zones. But what does that got to do with my giving, God? What does that got to do with my life? Well, God is saying, I'm trying to make sure that you know that there's some things I've been protecting you from, some things that I know you done ran into, some things that done deformed your outside, some things that make you look all crumpled up. But can I tell you, don't you lose that joy that's on the inside, because it's worth your protection. This is why there's a joy in my salvation. The joy ain't in my ability. The joy ain't in my gifting. The joy ain't in my stuff. It's in the God that's able to save me. And if my God is able to do it, if my God is willing to do it, surely I can stand with joy. It don't matter about the nation, I still got joy. It don't matter about my bank account, I still got joy. It don't matter what they say about you, I still got joy, because I got the God that loved me so much that he made the S-O-N come down from heaven, die on a cross, and say, I'll give you opportunity for a brand new life. All of your reward, everything that you need is possible. It's possible right here. And God has created these moments where we bump into stuff so we can see just how much that the joy doesn't have to leave. I told you I'm finished. When I started to recognize I had been trying to make my faith too rigid, like it would hold everything. And I kept wondering why then all of a sudden the joy kept shifting. But now I got a lot more fluidity. Stuff come and I feel like, I feel like, as Bruce Lee say, be like water, my friends. You just let it flow with you. I don't have to hold it. I don't have to fight everything. I ain't got to know everything. In fact, I don't know everything, but I know one thing, that I know that there is a God that sits on high and looks down low. I know that there is a God that has never left the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. I know I got a God with the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know I got a God that is able to make what it is that I need. I got a God that is willing to come my way and do it for me. We got a God. We got a God that is able to give you one more day on this journey. And it is my hope that as we transition and move, as we close out this season about giving, that you will be able to hold to that joy too and be able to say, I'm glad about it. Pray with me.